All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of Red Pill News on Red Pill 78. As always, I am Zak, the Corruption Detector, and joining me live in the studio, once again, my good friend Bob Kudla from Trade Genius Academy. Bob, what's going on, dude?
Where should we begin? You have an hour?
Yeah, sure. We got as much time as we need.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And, you know, if people are interested in what we're doing, just come to tradelikeagenius.com. I put specials together for you, but they just run to the end of the month. I think we talked about that a little bit earlier this month. And, you know, see what we're doing. We're really helping people, you know, make money nearly every day in the stock market, especially if you're a new trader. We got some really good processes to help you develop good habits. And I sent you some of the attaboys we're getting from some of our clients, especially the new ones. These are all within the last week or two. So you can get a sense, if you want to share those with your listeners, to really how we're helping people. And I think give people really good insight. It's not just, hey, Bob's great. It really shows people kind of what we're doing. And I think people will get good value from being part of what we're doing.
Most def. And that'll be in the pinned comment and the description of the video below.
Yeah, so you know what's interesting is that there's just a lot of, I would say, convergences coming together that that, you know, for me, interesting to me is, you know, I see everything through the lens of stock trading, but I'm also a kind of geopolitical junkie, and I like to see how these piece parts move together. I think, you know, you have the disturbances in the US, you have China, which is like really the untold story. China's having a really bad year.
Yeah, they are.
And there's a lot of things coming at China that will absolutely affect the US. And I'm talking, none of it is political. A lot of it has to do with, you know, it started with the lockdowns with China, which I don't know why they overreacted, but they overreacted because they know more about this virus than apparently everybody else did. And they just went off the rails with it and really shut their economy down, and then scared the heck out of the rest of the world. Might be by design. That could have been political. Could have been less forced. You know, basically a collapse of the Western systems, and we don't care if our people suffer. But it didn't end there with China. You know, they've been having severe problems with swine flu, you know, for their pigs, not necessarily people. They've been having problems with avian flu with their chicken supply. They keep talking about not doing trade deals, but they're buying the world out of soybean and corn, and they're one thing people don't know, China is really 3 river valleys. Okay, that's how they survive. And the Yangtze River, which everybody should know about it, that's the one that, you know, everybody thinks of China. That is the river. It empties out of Shanghai, and the headwaters, you know, before it comes not into the mountains, is Pkwy. And those are cities in China. And then you have Three Gorges Dam that kind of sits in the middle, really at the headwaters of the agricultural valley.
Well, and this is the water supply for all of Asia too. I mean, like, it's not just China. It's like India and other places as well. Correct?
Yeah. You know, that whole area, right? Because it all comes out of the same area in the Himalaya Mountains and or the Himalayas if you're from other parts of the world. But they, so it's a problem. But what's really interesting is, and here it ties into the global climate change stuff too, is that you have basically, when you have these solar minimums, you have basically the squeezing out like a sponge of the rivers of the basically these atmospheric rivers. And the monsoon has been persistent in China. And I have a subscriber of my service that actually lives in China saying that it's still raining up above the dam. It has not stopped. It should have stopped weeks ago. You know, the monsoon in China, it goes all the way to Japan too. Japan's getting hit really hard too. But these dams aren't designed to take it. So almost all the dams below Three Gorges Dam are at risk. Some have already are failing essentially. But what people don't understand about that dam, even if that dam doesn't break, first of all, if it breaks, you know, we're locked limit down on the stock markets around the world. You know, the Chinese won't be able to feed their people. You know, the United States won't be able to get their pharmaceuticals. Europe won't be able to get their finished goods. I think people don't really understand that this river is the linchpin. In fact, I saw an article where Taiwan says if they're attacked, they're going to send every missile they can into the Three Gorges Dam. Okay, that should just show you what military planners think of that strategic nature of that dam. It's a big old target. And the reason being is that, everything flows out of Shanghai. If that thing floods the port of Shanghai, is already being delayed because of the rains, that port's offline. But it's not just that. Ships go up that river. They go up through the lock system, through the Three Gorges Dam, into that city I just mentioned, and that is the railhead into the Chinese Belt and Road into Europe and into Central Asia. So if they lose that ability to ship goods to and from Central Asia into the motherland of China, that's another disaster for Europe and for the United States. So all eyes are on that dam, and the raining hasn't stopped, and nobody's talking about it at all. And the Chinese actually had to admit that their dam is under stress. It's 50 feet over where the engineers said the water should be. They have the thing opened at full throttle right now, and the water can only go out so fast. So if it keeps raining, and that the headwaters above that dam is huge. The square miles that are being saturated with water, all those tributaries coming in, is mind-boggling. I mean, look, I'm not a China fan, but in this situation, I pray it doesn't break. I mean, you're talking probably 40 million people directly going to be dispersed. You're telling me about an article that maybe 400 million people are at risk, but a lot of people will starve. And I don't wish that on anybody, and it would cause stress around the world. I mean, absolutely. You're talking Book of Revelation kind of stuff here.
Well, and I was reading the other day that it's not just the agricultural success of the Chinese people that is in danger here, but a fair amount of food produced for the rest of the world is also grown in that watershed right there. Something like 12, 15%, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing too. What people don't realize, when they dammed that river up, they lost a lot of fertility because all that silt built up behind the dam. And so, if when the floodwaters recede, a lot of that land below the river is not going to be very fertile. So, even for the next couple of years, it's going to be problematic for the Chinese and for everybody. It's going to cause food prices to go up around the world.
And you mentioned pharmaceuticals there. Obviously, we get a lot of our pharmaceuticals directly from China. That's something that's come up recently in the last couple of months. But I mean, how much are we talking? I mean, is it like a couple of select manufacturers, or is it something greater than that?
No, the data that I'm reading, you're talking 85 to 90% of the pharmaceuticals or the precursors are made in that valley. Wuhan is a huge capital for that, and then the river's down below. I mean, the city's down below that river. So yeah, I mean, look, if you look at Kodak stock, it just went parabolic because Trump designated Kodak as a manufacturing center for, ironically, hydroxychloroquine, but also as part of his mission to bring back, mission critical pharmaceuticals back into the United States so that we can protect ourselves. You're going to see more and more of that as people, especially that. And Three Gorges doesn't have to break. There's 3 or 4 dams below the Three Gorges that are ready to go. So just any one of those dams goes, it'll flood out like Wuhan and along the banks of some of these other downstream. Then Shanghai, within 6 or 7 days, Shanghai will be inundated. So yeah, absolutely.
So all of that flooding that we're seeing right now, I mean, there's a bit of coverage about it, but I mean, basically, China's a big place. They're not necessarily explaining the geography. Is the flooding that we're seeing like before you get to that giant Three Gorges Dam, or is this all of the extra water that is allowed to flow out of Three Gorges?
Yeah, they basically, Three Gorges Dam is no longer serving as a water reservoir. So that thing is on full tilt release, and so everything below Three Gorges Dam is flooding.
Okay. Okay.
And the dams below it they've already opened up their floodgates. So it's no longer serving as a floodgate. As a flood reservoir, and they're all at their heights of engineering. So they're basically at these dams can basically fail at any point per the engineers, saying, "Hey, we're 50 feet over flood stage in the Three Gorges." So yeah, and look, shipping can't go up that river right now, so it's a big problem. It's something that more people should talk about, and it's one of those things they just keep it under the rug here, but it's a big problem.
Have you heard about these mystery seed packets that have started to arrive at homes all over the United States? I mean, if it was just, like a certain geographic area, I mean, can maybe write it off, but it appears to be targeted. It's like people in every state in our country have received these strange packets of different types of seeds, and they are supposedly coming from China. But China actually just responded and said that, no, we are not sending it. The whole thing is very, very strange.
Well, it's pretty easy to find out where the shipping started from, because there's actually a chain of custody. So let's assume for the second China's lying, which is probably an easy assumption.
Yeah,
I don't know what to make of it until they analyze the seeds, but some of it could be psychological warfare, because they realize how gullible Americans are,
right?
And so they could just say or do anything. And remember they were shipping gun parts too a month earlier.
Oh,
so I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah. So
no, what happened?
Yeah, in Nashville they intercepted 10,000 parts for AR-15s, and so they're on the lookout for it was destined for into Atlanta. So there's something wild going on, in terms of the intelligence agencies within China itself. But I don't know what those seeds are. I mean, I've heard everything from, it's get it out in the wild kind of a thing, and
invasive species.
Yeah, invasive species, to just some sort of massive psyop campaign to freak people out about what's coming next.
Well, I think it's working. We've talked about TikTok on a number of occasions, and I always recommend people, if you have TikTok on your phone or whatever it is, uninstall it, delete everything, get new passwords, because that application is a major security risk for the United States. It's already been outlawed in the Capitol, I believe, in Congress. If you work in the congressional buildings, you're not allowed to have TikTok installed on your phone or device, but the implications of it are quite broad-ranging. I mean, even if you don't work in D.C., if you are tangentially connected to anything having to do with the government, there's a possibility that this application could be used for nefarious purposes. Well, now, because it is like one of the most popular apps in America, ironically, it looks like there is an American venture capital firm who's looking to purchase TikTok for $50 billion. Okay, that's an insane amount of money. And, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because, it also makes me think, all of these giant tech firms in America, they have just these massive, in my estimation, overvaluations, and they produce absolutely nothing. Like, how is it possible that they are worth so much when they don't have any product that they're putting out?
Well, let me answer that question first, and then we'll go back to TikTok. So there's a concept with the way they set up these indexes called market capitalization weighted indexes. So the bigger you are, the more money that comes into that index, it gets allocated based on size. So these companies are growing in value simply because they're bigger, and it's basically it's a kind of a geometric progression. You have to look no further than Tesla to see a company that earns no money worth almost $300 billion in market cap, because as it grew, more money gets allocated to it. And so that's why those guys are doing that. The other reason is that it's basically, there's an inverse rule of valuation for a stock. So the competition for stocks is the yield of the 10-year treasury. So the lower the 10-year treasury goes, the lower the what's called the stock earnings yield or the dividend yield requirement for a stock. So as the 10 years down to like what, 0.5%, well, companies that have earnings yield greater than 0.5 are going to get bid up in price. So, you don't have to make a whole lot of earnings for people to say, well, I have to be in stocks versus being in bonds so that I can get a return on my money above what they call the risk-free rate, which is the 10-year yield. So that's why those companies are valued so highly. Look, it's a big mystery to everybody, and this happened before. There was a thing called the Nifty 50, and this was back in the 60s, where it happened again with mutual funds, where the biggest 50 stocks in the United States started to exponentially grow in value versus the rest of the stock market. And so all of a sudden it broke because of inflation. Basically the Vietnam War killed it. We're in the same situation now because we're creating inflation with what the Fed's doing. So at some point here, it'll break. And when it breaks, it's like the Three Gorges Dam of Wall Street. People will be pouring out of this, but it will affect almost every ETF, which is kind of like the new mutual fund, if you will, where they conglomerate different stocks together. You'll be seeing just basically wholesale selling, almost like we happened in February. And then you'll see the stocks of those companies go down tremendously. And it happened in 2000, 2008. And it's gonna happen again. We're at the threshold. Once you get 150% stock value to GDP, you get these 40 to 50% corrections. They can't lift GDP because of what they did with the response to the virus, but they're lifting the price of the value of stocks, and physics always prevails. So it'll come back down. And but that's that. Now TikTok. What's interesting about TikTok is where the servers are located. And because the servers are located in China, or China has access to the servers if they're not in China, is that they can just draw out all the data they want and need. And look, you don't have to, it's amazing. I was just reading this morning, a guy, it's not just TikTok. If you have an iPhone, I can have an iPhone sitting right here, and I can just tell you, and this happened to me, and we're looking for refrigerators. Next thing you know it, I'm getting ads on when I go online and on my phone, I got text messages saying there's appliance sales. Mm-hmm. So they can hear you. They have an app that is listening to you whether your phone's on or off, and they can. So you have to assume everything you say. If you have an iPhone or any of these devices, or even your laptop, that you're being listened to. So that's scary. And TikTok's just the most obvious because it's basically extremely popular. Whoever they did a great job creating that app because the kids are addicted to it. But at the same time is that they're just sucking personal data in. And people are like saying, like, my daughter has it. She's like, so what? It's a great thing. I said, well, people don't realize is that you have compromising data and information that's going to be used against, not just, when I say you, I'm talking about the global you, that it'll come out of left field. Like somebody's going to say, hey, I know what site you've been on. Hey, I'm going to tell your wife, or hey, I'm going to tell your friend that, or I'm going to tell your employer this, or by the way, thanks for giving me your debit card information. I'm going to go ahead and steal from you, or I'm going to go and take a loan out because I parsed together all the information I need. People don't understand the significance of letting this data be out. So, yeah. So it doesn't matter where TikTok is. It'll be TikTok exploited by the Russian mafia or the American mafia versus the Chinese, and I guarantee the NSA is just sitting there with a vacuum cleaner anyway.
Sure.
Getting it all.
From what I understand, if you have a company that is in China, or a portion of your company operates in China, the Chinese government has it mandated so that they can get instant access to whatever data they want because of your presence there. So
Yeah.
I guess if the servers are located in China and they're, going to remain there, it would probably be a massive undertaking to move all of that infrastructure, and everything would be down probably for a period of time. Then they would definitely be able to get access to all that data. Not to mention the fact that they built it. It's a CCP app. It is a Chinese company and it's a Chinese app. So I'm sure that there could probably be some Trojan horses in there. So regardless of wherever the server is, they could reach in and get that data anytime they want. To your point about the compromising data, whatever it is, they can take all of the information they stole from Experian just a couple years ago, because they essentially got all of the credit and data information for every single adult in the country at that time, and then match it up with whatever they get from TikTok, and then the next thing you know, your identity has been used to purchase, cars and get loans all over the world, perhaps. And on the note of loans, there's quite a bit of information going on about the PPP loans right now. Either people have been very successful in getting them, or they've been sucked up by giant companies who really don't need to borrow the money, or you've got people who, like this guy, who is a Florida business owner, but there's no protections on this stuff, and I'm just flabbergasted by it. He was able to get $13.5 million in PPP loans to pay for employees at, I don't know, a dozen companies or something like that. But apparently they didn't exist. And he used the money instead to buy a Lamborghini Huracan and stay at luxury hotels. And of course, good, wonderful thing, the government figured it out and they went after him. But there's only a handful of cases where people are getting caught doing this stuff. So I guess I'm worried about the position that the United States is in, handing out all of this money, and there being virtually no checks and balances on what's happening with it.
Yeah, so here, my view on it might be a little bit different on it. I understand there's going to be fraud in this. A guy in Vegas did the same thing too. Apparently, if you get a Lamborghini, you're an idiot and you get caught. So people have to learn if they're gonna defraud the government to keep a low profile.
Get a Hyundai.
But I think what they did in this situation was, I think there was such fear that they figure, we'll try to clean up the fraud on the back end, and instead of trying to make this thing so complicated. I think they were worried that everybody will lay off every employee. So they just said, we're going to take this chance. Look, I was in the solar business. I saw how people abuse the federal tax credits for solar, and people set up businesses in solar just to defraud the government, overcharging for their panels. And it got to a point where the electric companies with the government had to step in and create basically audit control, saying, no, panels don't cost that much money, but probably the people in the first year or two got away with it. I think that's the same thing with the with the PPP. I think they didn't care. I think now, if you notice the second round of stimulus, they want to do some things a little bit differently. But at some point, look, if you got a PPP loan, when you go for your forgiveness, you're going to have to literally show, actually federal documents, your 941s, and they're going to match them against your tax returns. So, and I think they're going to work from the top down. There was so much visibility if you have a loan more than $150,000, they're going to go ahead and they're going to probably spend some time validating. If it's less than $150,000, I think they're just going to forgive them anyway. Yeah, and just say we just shove money into the system. But yeah, anytime there's you put the trough out, you're going to get this abuse, and that's why I think you and I lean more towards not having that kind of environment, because that's where all the fraud comes from, and that's why Democrats love that stuff. I mean, you put that stuff out there, all you're doing is you're basically vote buying, and making people dependent instead of people having to rely on their wits and ingenuity and hard work to add value. But yeah, that's the PPP. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. And the thing is too, it's tied to your business. So these businesses roll over, those loans are uncollectible anyway. So I think there's going to be a certain amount of defaults on those loans, and same with the EDLI, whatever.
EIDL, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's 30-year maturities. Well, how many businesses are going to be around in 30 years?
That's what I was wondering, because Steve Mnuchin mentioned forgiving all small loans, and I didn't know if he was only referring to the PPP or also referring to the EIDL, because, it's my understanding that PPP straight up forgivable. As long as you use it for payroll, you don't have to pay it back. But the EIDL, like you said, I believe it's 3.75% at 30 years. And I'm wondering if you think a portion of those are probably going to be forgiven as well.
I think it's a good possibility. And so I talked to the gentleman who owns the coffee shop. He was actually a fairly new business. He didn't think he'd even get the loan, and they gave him the loan. He was a startup. Poor guy. He started it 6 months before all this. He's actually thriving because that's the only restaurant that's really open. So but he said they already delayed the payback starting a year, and he was getting word from his sources at his bank saying they may defer for 2 years.
Wow.
Just even start paying the loan back. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some language coming up and saying, hey, if you hire more people or you do this or that, you can get better terms or whatever. Look, the whole reason why they did this, one, was to keep people employed, but number two, there's a dollar shortage out there, Zach. What people don't understand, they think, oh my gosh, the US dollar is going to collapse. There's a shortage of dollars around the world. People don't realize the dollar is not used just in the United States. It's used worldwide, and there's a shortage of it. And that's part of what caused the February collapse in the stock market. And that's why they've just been shoving dollars out there. And that got to the point now where you saw gold and silver hitting highs. We started getting that, maybe we're hitting that threshold. But, once the stimulus money goes away here in August, we're back to, creating a dollar shortage situation again. And so, the stock market's at risk. And so you're going to see the Fed, they're going to have to keep spending in Congress, and they're going to have to keep buying it at the Fed. And just because they don't, gold and silver may go down, but the stock market will collapse. Okay. And the economy will collapse. So they're just going to, we're going to throw another $4 trillion at the balance sheet in the next 12 months. So buy gold and buy silver, or buy the gold miners and silver miners like we do. And, we're like in inning 4 of this thing. So the next 18 months, this thing's going to go until something truly breaks. Or, you get Judy Shelton in there. She has some interesting concepts around gold as a reserve, not necessarily gold backed. And I think you're going to start seeing probably this fiat system, that's pure fiat, is going to probably go away in the next 2 to 3 years.
Man, that would be great. I think everybody's hoping for that. All right. Well, go ahead.
No, I said they have to, because it's going to get to the point where the whole world will go Zimbabwe, right? So yeah.
Somebody just sent me $5 billion.
Yeah. Every country in the world is printing like there's no tomorrow, because I think they know there is no tomorrow, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to redesign the monetary system again. But look, the way I look at it and the way you look, I'm a realist. I can only change what I can change. But in the meantime, if gold prices are going up, I can rage against the machine, or I can buy gold.
Exactly. I just bought a whole stack of silver a couple days ago. So yeah.
You just keep buying, and then you just and then you buy what's going up and you sell what's going down. I mean, it's a simple concept we have at Trade Genius.
Yep, no doubt. All right. Well, thanks for being here, brother. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Zach. See you later.
Hey guys, one more thing. I just want to thank everyone for watching today. If you have not subscribed yet, I urge you to please consider subscribing. There will be a couple of videos that pop up if you want to continue to watch. There's also some ways in the description of this video that you can follow me on other platforms. Please consider doing that as well. And if you want to support the program directly, there are means to do that below as well. Thank you all for your support over the last couple of years. Consider liking and sharing this video and help me get the real news to people who don't yet know they've been lied to.